There you are.
Oh, we're on the other side today. Oh, no.
Oops, 15 minutes.
Yeah, we're over there.
Ain't nobody gonna find us.
Should I shut down and restart?
Whatever you want.
Yeah, maybe.
I already got 3 people watching.
Well, what? You can't do both?
We're on.
Hi.
We're on.
Oh, YouTube. There you go.
Hey, everybody, what's happening? It's Robert Phoenix here, and we are live with the Krimis. Just a little bit of a detour. We got sidetracked. Sometimes it happens in the switch, and user error probably on this end. But we're here, we're live, and I'll be putting this up over on the 15 minutes side as well. So just keep that in mind. And what's happening, everybody?
Hello.
Hey, Steve and Chris, nice to see you guys.
Hey,
Hey,
thanks.
Robert, good to see you. Hope you had a good 4th of July.
Yeah, it was good. Small town. I mean, it was an interesting day. We woke up and we went down to the parade, and we're a part of this group here. We're working on getting the fluoride out of the water. So we had decided that we were going to go down to the parade and pass out water and talk to people about our effort. So there's this gal that is part of the group. It's kind of amazing to watch the transformation that's taken place with her. Her name is Jeanette. And when I first met Jeanette could barely get a coherent series of thoughts strung together. It was almost painful to listen to Jeanette, because you'd want to say, come on, get there. I know where you want to go with this thing. And she'd felt like her thyroid had been blown up by fluoride and was very, very activated by the opportunity to maybe change the situation. So I've watched Jeanette go from somebody who was very shy, very introverted, and having an issue with being able to talk in a public setting, to being this absolute firebrand. I mean, it's amazing to see what's taken place with her. And this group that I'm involved with is quite religious, and they're Catholics, and so Jeanette is always talking about the Lord and the Spirit of the Lord and the Lord's word, and I don't have any problem with it. I just up front, it's like, fine, that's all good. I'm okay with that, right? I don't go to your church, I don't do your sacraments, but I'm really okay with the energy that you're talking about, because I believe in that energy. I may believe it in a different kind of way, but I believe in that energy. So I guess it was last week when we had our event down at the barbecue place, and one of Jeanette's longtime friends pulled me aside, and she said, if you saw Jeanette 3 years ago, you wouldn't recognize her, because she's so different. She's so different. She's just really come out of her shell. And then she mentioned the Lord, right? She's like, the Lord is doing wonderful things with Jeanette. I'm like, yeah, it's great, isn't it? And so there are 2 things that are really, to me, very interesting. Is that, number one, if people get involved on a issue that's really important to them and allow themselves to be committed to that thing, you can experience change. It's like any relationship, right? You get to experience change. And I'm watching her change through this. I mean, I'm changing too. I'm like doing my best to have more patience and even take a bit of a back seat, because I have other ideas about what we're doing than she does. And I'm, considerably more radical. Like, I want to troll the dentist and stuff, right? And she doesn't want to do that. So I'm like, okay, I'm just going to sit back and, I'll support you and do some other stuff. But the other thing too is the spiritual piece. And I'm watching somebody grow. And some people may say, well, that's just a kind of a human affair or human trait. I don't think so. I think she, because of her belief and the interactivity with that belief, it's making her stronger. And the faith is making her stronger and making her more effective. So that's just kind of an aside. So we did go out and, we passed out the water, and it was a very, we had our little Q code and vote yes in November. They really got into this thing. They had labels for the water, and
Good.
and then they laminated the labels. I mean, this was really great. So that was really cool. And then the parade is just pure Americana. You're not, I mean, it was interesting because there was this kid there, maybe about 18 years old, 19. I started talking to him. I said, well, where are you from? He said, I'm from California. I said, where? So a small town in Marin County. So, well, what small town? I said, well, San Geronimo. I said, oh, well, I lived there for a while. And he was freaked out. He's like, wow, you live? I said, yeah, for about 4 months I lived there. He says, wow, haven't I? So we started talking. And he said, I love this place. I think this is great. And I said, you know what? Really take this in, because in 20 years' time, you may never see this again. You may never see parades like this again. I'm not saying that's going to happen, but I think we have to have a discussion about that. And that kind of gets into probably where we want to launch, where we are, what we want to talk about today, which is this sense that things are kind of ending. Like there are things that we take for granted. I mean, even for instance, whether you agree with Trump or like Trump or whatever, he had this parade and the fireworks and the stationary tanks, and none of the major news networks were covering it, except for maybe Fox, I think. I think Fox covered it. NBC wouldn't cover it. CBS wouldn't cover it.
Interesting.
ABC wouldn't cover it. CNN wouldn't cover it. Now, if that was Obama and, had a kind of a more estrogenic version of that celebration, I'm sure they'd be all over that, right? But these are things that we just kind of have taken for granted. Whether you're a patriot or not or believe in the country, a president would have an event, and then these networks would cover it. That's not a given anymore.
Because it was the president.
Because it was
because
this
it's
president.
Office. It's not the person. They're honoring the office.
Right, exactly. They're honoring the office. But they've made this line in the sand now.
Yeah, they've made it about personality.
Yeah. Well, this is a couple of, we went to like 2 events yesterday, actually. I was joking with you earlier that we've been invited to 2 parties this year, and both of them were yesterday. And one of them was at this person who's kind of a local legend, musicians, and it was very, very Americana, guys sitting around with the guitars, just like old folks sitting around just, playing the old songs and what have you. And this being North Carolina, it was, those kind of version of songs, Shady Grove and that kind of stuff, and the occasional great murder ballad or something like that. But I noticed the difference between this year and last year was that, and it was only later actually at someone else's house, I didn't hear Trump mentioned once.
That's true.
Whereas last year, everyone was still in the freak out stage.
Yeah.
And there was just like no mention of him. And one person said last night, something about really being disturbed by the tanks in Washington. And all I said, well, better there than Tehran. And that was kind of the end of it, But I thought that I just realized that no one was really talking about Trump, whereas last year everyone was still, fritzing out about it.
So like 99% of the conversation was just personal, just interactions, people interacting, telling their life stories.
What's going on?
What's happening with you? What's happening with me? Oh, I met some really lovely woman and we got into a really nice conversation, but it was all about what's going on in her life and her struggles, her personal struggles, and how she's coping with, death of close people in her family, and not a word about politics. I didn't hear anyone talking about politics.
Do you think that's because people are burnt out? Do you think that's the reason?
Well, go ahead. I have one thought.
Yeah,
My one thought is that just came to me was that basically all the frightening, horrible things that were supposed to happen didn't happen under Trump.
Right.
And in fact, everything's just kind of sailing along. The economy's what it is. It's okay. We're not saying we're all, doing incredibly well, but, things haven't fallen apart. The apocalypse to fascism is really not coming from the Trump side of things for the most part. It's, even though he's not done a heck of a lot against it, but from the Antifa and the socialism side of things, and that's really where the where the fascism is coming from. And I guess that's part of what we can get into today too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Did you follow what happened up in Portland with the Antifa
Yes.
versus the Proud Boys and the whole thing with that guy Andy Gow or however you say
Right.
it?
So he got hit with a milkshake filled with cement.
Oh, right. Okay.
Right.
Right.
So for people who aren't aware, the Antifa are using a liquid weapon called a milkshake, which has fast drying cement and I think some kind of adhesive mixed into it, so that when it sprays, it gets very close to the skin, dries very quickly, and in order to get it off the skin, you have to rip the skin.
Really?
And
Yeah.
it leaves
Crazy
scars.
glue or something.
Really?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh, that's sick.
Right.
So and this guy, number one, if you want to play the identitarian politics game, number one, he's Asian. Number two, he's gay. And he just happens to be a conservative columnist.
Mm-hmm.
And they knew who he was. And I'm not sure why he would put himself in the middle of that event. I don't understand that. That's just, to me, that's almost masochistic.
Mm-hmm.
But they messed him up pretty badly.
I did see photos.
Right.
Yeah.
I'll say this. We had a friend who was part of, who did he work for? Was it Newsweek? He was involved in those day in the life books with the Soviet Union. And,
Yeah.
And he was,
Ukraine.
well,
Wasn't
at
it
the
Ukraine?
time it was the Soviet Union.
Okay.
And
Right.
he knew a lot of these combat photojournalists. And it's true that they live for that adrenaline. Once they get that kind of adrenaline, nice tail, they need to have it again. There's like nothing like it, or kind of like people who go to war. I don't know. I haven't been to war in this go around in that way.
Right.
And any type of conflict, I really don't seek that adrenaline again. That's just not me.
Right.
But anyway, but that's a thing with a lot of these people.
Mm.
Doesn't matter if you're gay, Asian, whatever. You just
It's true.
it's like almost like an addiction to get that rush. And I don't know whether that's true of this person. And then I guess also you heard at the same time that Antifa threatened. I don't know what rally it was. Maybe it was a rally that was supposed to be yesterday. That they had. What was it? Which acid? They had some kind of acid that they had accumulated.
Yeah, so Paulette says that Antifa Quick Concrete has acid base that causes blindness.
Right.
What kind of a person even thinks in that way? It's really
right. And so they can't get, and again, I get mixed feelings about, the ability to protest, but they're not protesting at this point, really. They're just manipulating everything for a particular socialist, violent agenda. And, and I understand facial recognition software and I detest it. Yet on the other hand, they get to wear, like in Portland, they refuse to pass any sort of face masks.
I thought they were
rallies.
Contemplating outlawing face masks.
But they can't get it passed. They've been trying for a long time, or certain people have, as far as I know. But that's kind of like, I guess that's really like ground zero for all this, all this craziness.
Yeah. Well, here's what I think. I think that what's taking place is that it's part theater and part of recruitment process, so that people can see this and they can see that on one side Antifa is enabled, and if they have any kind of latent revolutionary tendencies or whatever kind of malfunction they've got in their system that would allow them to just blatantly injure another human without any due cause. These kinds of videos and these kinds of demonstrations are like recruitment films. It's like,
that's a good point.
I want to be a part of that. It's sort of like, this kind of the psychically driven programming of our system, right?
Mhm.
Right. Well, and if you look
It's like a
at
hypnotic suggestion.
yeah, and if you look at the films of the Weather Underground in the '60s, it's kind of like the same thing. You can almost see the same attitude. The violence is all justified. Go ahead.
Do you watch iPod, In Pursuit of Truth? Sir Patrick Mack.
Nope.
He's quite good. Some mutual friends of ours turned us on to him, and he's from LA. He's got a background in film, and he does like
Oh, you guys told me about him. Yeah, you
a
guys
newsy
really
kind of thing.
yeah.
But he just did his own documentary on the weathermen,
Mhm.
and he put out part 1 already, and I think part 2 must be coming very soon.
Yeah, and the connection of Obama
And it's really helpful
to them and Bill Ayers and all that.
I lived through that time, but I was so young and not interested in politics at all. I actually had an aversion to it, so I never paid attention, but it was all swirling around me growing up.
Yeah.
So I'm very interested now in these documentaries that iPod is doing because, I really need to understand what was going on then and how it's affecting us today, how that's still being played out.
Oh, of
All
course.
that karma.
Absolutely.
That wheel was set in motion and it's still running.
Well, this goes back to CPUSA, the Communist Party of the United States of America, who I think right now are calling most of the shots. That's what I think. And I think that behind Antifa is CPUSA.
Oh, interesting.
And behind what's going on the border is CPUSA. That's what I think. When you have the stunts of Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez and Julian Castro and Cory Booker apparently walked 5 people across the border yesterday. Did you see that?
No.
Yeah,
No,
Cory
what you said.
Yeah, Cory Booker escorted 5.
Getting some strange interference, Robert.
What's that?
Some strange interference is coming through from your microphone or something.
Okay, hold on. How about now?
That's
Any
better.
better?
Yeah,
might have been Jasper sitting on my microphone.
Could have been.
could have been.
But
Yes.
Jasper works for the other side.
Jasper,
He tries to come here, and so I figured this out, right? Jasper's covert. Everybody thinks Jasper's on my side. They think, but he comes in here to disrupt my work.
I see.
Right? I think so. Jasper is undercover.
I think
Well,
so.
maybe he just wants you to amp up a little bit, and so he's just giving you a poke.
No. I think I figured out Jasper's true motive. Rosie never comes in here.
I noticed.
No.
Right? Rosie respects what I do.
Too much of a lady.
Yeah.
Lady
But,
Rose.
man, she's fierce though. Don't let that little.
Good for her.
She's fierce. So getting back to this thing.
Right. So there's stunts on the border.
So Cory Booker escorted some quote unquote illegals across the border and basically said, to Trump, take this, right? And how is that even legal? I don't know. I guess it's legal now because of whatever they did with their latest passage of the budget and the DACA, circle jerk and all that. I mean, but I feel like that the forces. Okay, so I was thinking about this morning. And every now and then I get things that just come to me. And I walked into the bathroom, started brushing my teeth, and it popped into my head, who's really behind what's going on at the border? And why is it such a big deal? And why is Cortez involved? And why is Castro involved? And why is Cory Booker involved? And it just popped into my head that the people that are architecting that movement or that project, it's Obama and Valerie Jarrett. They're the ones that are masterminding what's going on at the border. And I don't have anything that leads back to them. It just popped into my head. That's like, of course, it makes sense because it's an Olinsky-like event, right? They're using that as a flashpoint to have a seizing the moment and seizing. What do they call it? It's there's a word, but it's like they want to use that.
Carpe diem?
Carpe diem?
No. They want to use that and then use it and polarize people, and then continue to work that over and over and over again. And I feel like you know, that's what's going on. And
and it's massive. Go ahead, keep going.
Yeah, well, it's just like, well, you know, why would they just sit back and go, okay, we're done now. We're just going to turn this over to Trump.
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that that's the case at all. I think that they're actively involved in disassembling and sabotaging.
Because they had their agenda and it was interrupted.
Oh,
It's
absolutely.
like coitus interruptus. You know, they were effing the country and it got interrupted. So they want to keep that trajectory going.
Yes,
At
absolutely.
all costs.
Absolutely. I mean, this gets back to the FISA warrants and that Obama and his administration were all over Trump even before he got elected. Okay, so they probably knew, based on some inside intel, that there was a really good chance that he would be elected. That's my sense. Because
at the same time, they promoted him to, you know,
because they thought,
because they thought he would be the best one to beat. At the same time, the DNC promoted Trump against the other Republicans.
But I think they just cover all their bases. They just go ahead and whoever's running, because they also did that kind of background on
Cruz?
Ted Cruz. So it wasn't just Trump.
Well, I don't think they would have done it with John Kasich, though.
No, I didn't hear his name mentioned, but I did hear Ted Cruz's name mentioned, that they had done the same thing with him.
Yeah.
So they're just covering their bases.
Well, this is straight out of you know, the former Soviet Union, like East Germany, the Stasi. This is exactly what they did, what they would do, right? So they created a false narrative, and then they used the system to use the legal system to somehow entrap Trump and try to throw everything off. And well, they were effective. I mean, I don't, to be honest with you, I think if they had somehow managed to get him out, that would have been gravy. I don't think that was really ever their intention. I think their intention was to do exactly what they did, was to Jimmy rig the first 2 years and to draw this whole thing out and to turn people against one another.
And just cause as much damage as is humanly possible.
Right.
And that they've achieved.
Right, absolutely.
They've achieved that.
It's a complete destabilization. And it's the fact that there are people from, I don't know, it's like 50, 60 different countries,
right,
from everywhere in the world, from Central Asia, you know, to obviously from, you know, the ones you get noted or more from, you know, from Africa, from especially from West Africa and countries that are harboring certain diseases that we probably don't want here. But I mean, Chinese, Indian, everybody's coming across the border, you know, and
how are they getting there?
We're like freaking out about trying to get a plane ride to Texas, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know,
how are we gonna,
you know, these people are traveling 10,000 miles to cross the border in Mexico. You don't do that, you know, and if you're desperate and poor, you don't do that unless you get them.
Like, were you the one who said, look, you can't even get an apple or an orange across the border?
Yeah.
Somebody said that. Was it you? You did?
Yeah.
Somebody
It's
did.
California. You can't bring fruit into California.
You can't bring fruit into California.
Right. But you can bring somebody who's undocumented with various plagues and viruses and diseases.
Trouble understanding is how people get so emotionally involved in this rhetoric and completely ignore the fact that what is being done is an illegal alien. It's not like people who want to come into the country through the regular process are being denied. No, this is an illegal process, and they are forcefully coming in and blowing up all the social systems. And yet average Americans will put their life on the line to defend them. It makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
That's how brainwashed they are.
Good.
And they don't see brainwashing as like some, you know, they think it's like some Svengali act. So we would recognize it if we were being brainwashed. So of course we're not.
Jonestown.
You know, there's not someone there with a TikTok.
I think it's spite masquerading as compassion. You know, I think that they,
what?
Well, I think they're angry at the system. I think they're angry at Trump. I think they're angry at a number of different things. And so they basically transform their spite, or they've just put a mask on their spite, and it looks like compassion for the people coming across the border.
Don't you think they've been taught to hate Trump?
Yes.
How many people really knew Trump? look, I'm a New Yorker, so we know Trump. We grew up thinking, oh my God, what an idiot. I would have do want anything to do with that man, But very slowly we were won over because of his actions. So we're observing his actions, and we're not just listening to whatever the news says about him. And we're seeing things that are happening, and we're saying, well, it's kind of interesting. Okay. And then there are some things that are terrifying. Yes. But there's some kind of an equilibrium and a looking at the situation with a certain amount of dispassion.
Sometimes I think that's
you
the
don't
case.
get pulled one way or the other by outer forces.
Right. I think he's really dropped the ball on the border. I think he's done an absolutely horrific job. And I also think that he probably had his hands tied.
Right.
Part of what was going on with the Mueller investigation was that they were saying, look, you're going to do some stuff here. And we're going to tell you what to do. And you can do these other things. But you're gonna allow this to happen. Okay. And I think also, he gets a lot of pressure from his son-in-law and his daughter. And they're both dyed-in-the-wool New York liberals and progressives, and they've got to go to parties and do all the stuff that they used to do with all their liberal and progressive friends. And they can't, I don't think they can appear to be kind of these hateful and closed-minded conservatives. So I think Trump also has some degree of skin in the game with honoring his own kind of family ties and loyalty. So but I think he's dropped the ball completely on the border.
It seems like the numbers are rising.
And actually be cynical about it. An ongoing crisis at the border is helpful to him in his reelection.
Yeah.
To have that keep on going, to have that perpetuated, I would think a solving of the situation would elevate him.
Right.
Plus, there's so many vested interests with the border. You've got, huge amounts of drugs get moved
and human
bodies, and it's just, there's a lot of really, really powerful people who are involved in illicit trade that want those borders to be as loosey-goosey as possible. And
they're not all Democrats, I guess.
No, they're globalists.
No.
They're globalists, and some of them are probably extremely well-known American business magnates who have their hands in dirty pots, doing really terrible things, to our people in the name of profit and trade. Getting back to this documentary that you're talking about with the weathermen, I didn't want to stray too far from that because that's a really interesting topic. And there's another movie I just saw recently that was done by Tupac Shakur's half brother, and it's on drugs in the CIA, and it's worth watching because
drugs in the CIA.
Yeah, it's by Tupac Shakur's half brother, and it's worth watching because he gets into the relationship with the weathermen and the CIA. And that he makes this connection between how the weathermen basically storm SDS and take over the protest movement was generated and funded by the CIA, and that people like Bernardine Dorn has connections. Mark Rudd had connections with the CIA, with the government, and they're the ones that brought in huge amounts of LSD as well into the protest movement.
Right.
So there are these agents of destabilization, and they won. They won.
Yeah, well, that's it. They, and what happened to Bernadine Dorn? She ends up, being she's a law professor, right?
That's right.
That's right. You think about, had that happened, say, in the Soviet Union. You do that sort of thing, you'd be gone. Period. China, forget it. After they've done, harvesting what they can out of you, be gone.
Yeah. So when Obama was elected, I'm like, that's it. They won. They got their guy in. This is the apotheosis of that movement.
Yeah.
And that they became the mainstream at that point. The radical left became the mainstream at that point.
Right. And the story with the mailman.
Oh yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right? With so he's
maybe
did we
repeat
talk
it for
about that
people who
last
don't
time?
know.
No, Did we talk about that last time or?
Well, go ahead and say it.
Anyway,
There might be people who haven't heard it.
So anyway, yeah. So there's the mailman to Bill Ayers'
The
Ayers house in Chicago, and at one point, right,
Barack Obama was staying with them or visiting them.
He's talking to the wife of Bill Ayers, whose name I don't remember, and she says, "Oh, there's this wonderful."
He was talking to Bill Ayers. The postman was having conversations with Bill Ayers' mother.
Was the mother? I thought it was his wife. Okay.
No. It was Bill Ayers' mother.
That's right. It would have been the mother.
So
Obama was staying with Bill Ayers' parents.
Right.
For people that don't know, Bill Ayers' father was a pretty well-placed, high-ranking executive inside of the Chicago utilities system, Chicago Power, electricity, gas, water. Bill Ayers' father was a high-level administrator inside of that entity, that public entity. So keep going.
Yeah, and in fact, this documentary goes into his father and also this particular law firm that just shows up everywhere. And up until even the helicopter crash and
on the rooftop
in Manhattan.
Mm-hmm.
These law offices
about a month ago
pulled out of the World Trade Center just before it went down, et cetera, et cetera.
And IPOT, Sir Patrick Mack, he's the one who we heard telling that story and following that thread. So that's really interesting. So
maybe we'll put it up in the comments. We'll just put a link to it.
Cool.
Anyway, so we were talking. So the mother was saying that
we have this lovely young foreign student.
We have this lovely young foreign student staying with us.
Foreign student.
Yes.
Yes, and they interviewed the mailman. Actually, it was Jerome Corsi was interviewing the mailman. Okay. Continue.
Take it. Yeah. So she specifically says we have this foreign student staying with us, and then later on, and intimating that it was, and I think she gave the name whatever because she thought that he had a tremendous future. Then later on, I guess apparently because his mailman would talk to people on his route, and then they would get into political discussions. Meanwhile, he meets Obama coming to the house one day as a young man, and he had just graduated law school, and they get into a conversation. The mailman says, "Oh yeah," and he says, "Well, congratulations." And he says, "Yes, he was going to thank the Ayers for helping finance and getting him through law school." And he said, "Oh, good. And so, what kind of thing are you going to do with your law degree?" And Obama looks right at him and says, "I'm going to be president."
Right, he knew all along.
Yeah,
so
he was groomed.
Right,
it's a setup. It's a con job. It's a con job.
What was really funny is that the postman would have conversations with Ayers' father.
That's right.
And Ayers' father would basically say, "Don't you feel like you're,
how are you treated on your job?
Don't you feel like you're like an abused kind of,
did they treat you okay?
Or slave?" Yeah, it's like he's trying to like turn them, right? It's
I thought that was.
Don't you hate working for the man?
It was very telling.
Yeah, is the man asking him that, right?
Yeah.
But these are the revelations that, when you hear them, it's like, okay, that's undeniable, and that's, I think, when you can start to dismantle the fabrication of who this man Barack Obama actually is, and who we were taught to believe he was is not true. There's something else entirely going on.
This is why satire is dead.
Well, that dovetails. We're going to get to that, but that dovetails with that story about the Russian woman who's drunk. You know that story too, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
So
yes.
Party.
Yeah, you can find this on the internet. There's a guy.
Party.
Yeah, there's a guy who was over in Russia, and he was doing business with the Russians. And I think it was either just before or just after the fall of the wall. And there's a woman there who's drunk, and she starts spouting off. She's Russian, and she's spouting off about this young guy who they've been working with for a long time. He's going to become president of the United States. And she calls him a chocolate baby. And she basically says his name is Barack Obama. And the guy had never heard the name before, and he's going to be president of the United States. And we are, oh yeah. So it's very clear that Obama was, I think, a CIA baby. He was He was raised inside the deep state, and he was basically shaped and contoured, at every step of the way. And
look how polished he is, and he's so articulate, he's charming, and yeah, he could charm a bird out of a tree.
It's breaking down now.
Yeah.
You hear him now. He does not have the eloquence. He does not have the charm. He does not have, the circumlocution. He does not come across, the way he did for a while. Even after he became president, I started listening to him. I'm saying he's giving the same speech as George Bush did, only they sound better. But he's saying the exact same thing. The whole script, but I don't think he's, I don't know, maybe when you get out of the White House, the drugs aren't as good, to hold you together to do that.
Could be. I just saw this movie a couple nights ago called The Minds of Men. And it was done by Melissa and Aaron Dykes.
Really good.
So they had a showing of the movie in Austin. So we went there, and they were there, and Catherine Austin Fitz was there. Even though I think she was one of the people that helped finance that movie. She was there. She was in attendance. Met Jay Dyer. He was there. And so if people haven't seen the movie, it's a very intense, long movie. You should probably watch it in stretches.
We did. I don't think we may not have finished it, but we watched a lot of it.
Maybe we should revisit it.
Yeah. So the real meat of the movie, though, is probably the last third of the movie, where they get into this guy who was snatched up by these theoretical brain surgeons, these quacks who were basically taking electrodes and programming people directly into their brain, right? So that was the final third. That's where the movie really, I feel like, has sort of the deepest merit, and you find out what happens when you get caught up in the system. And all of a sudden you're trapped, and now you're a guinea pig. And essentially what they did is they took this guy who had a semi-aggressive episode with his wife. He was living in Boston, and his wife was cheating on him. He knew it. And there was a boarder in the house, and he suspected her of cheating. Really brilliant guy, had 4 patents. He threw a coffee cup at the wife, missed her, probably on purpose, missing her. You see the wife's psychiatrist. The wife's psychiatrist basically says, I got a program just for you, and gets this guy into the clutches of these dudes who've been working on prisoners and people in mental health institutions, and basically putting electrodes into their brain and frying their brains. And so this guy becomes their guinea pig. And Michael Crichton, who wrote The Andromeda Strain and The Terminal Man, was apparently there as like an apprentice, or having some kind of an internship. So he saw what was going on with this guy, and he wrote the book The Terminal Man based on it.
Really?
Yeah. And so the guy eventually gets out, and he's toast.
So it was a true story?
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
And so the guy is toast, and he's got to spend the next 30 years of his life in and out of mental institutions. So what was really interesting about that, I was thinking about this, is the stuff that they did with the brain. And then I thought, well, Obama's got all these scars on his head.
Does he?
Oh yeah. Have you ever seen the pictures of it? He's got his head looks like the surface of Mars, with all these kinds of. Let me see if I can find it.
I haven't noticed.
Yeah.
See if I can find a photo
all this time we thought Fringe was satire.
Right.
So I thought to myself, well, what if that was actually going on with Obama? What if they were actually getting into his head and, doing different kinds of implant work?
I just finished reading The CIA Control of Candy Jones.
Right.
And I think what really struck me as just being unspeakably sad is how they will hijack people. She was a pinup girl in the 40s, and she was very well known as a model, and she owned a modeling agency, blah, blah, blah. And she went on a USO tour, and she was in the Philippines, and she got quite sick, and they put her in the hospital, and that's when they took her over. And then they destroyed her life. She did retrieve it, though. She did, Long John Nebel was married to her. and he helped her to climb back out of that pit that they put her in.
Mm-hmm.
But you hear this over and over and over. Some perfectly innocent person goes to a doctor for help, and they hijack their entire life.
Right. Absolutely. Well, this guy definitely had that happen to him.
Yeah, they turned her into, well, she was
Well-
a courier for the CIA and the FBI.
Yeah, but you
And
know,
a trained assassin. I don't know if she actually ever killed anybody,
But
but
she
they
was-
trained her how to,
but she was but it all starts off with youth trauma. She was traumatized as a child,
right, by her mother.
and you know that's where it all begins. It's where, you know, I mean, gosh, you know, I don't really not thankful enough to have had, you know, like what I thought would be a normal childhood, but which is actually almost like aberrant childhood at this point. You
Abnormal,
know,
not aberrant.
right? You know, just you know, growing up, playing on the streets, etc.
With parents who protect
Oh yeah,
you.
nice
Oh my
little,
goodness.
nice little line there.
See that?
Wow. Oh my goodness.
Okay. So that's one. And
Gee,
then,
that's a good one. I got one of those on my knee.
There's
Where my implants are.
Oh, you're on
this one right here. See that?
Interesting. Well, then
Yeah.
one would guess, you know, he may have a version of the neural lace. You know, that
It does
that they've
almost
been
look like a network.
talking about something to overlay
like a lace cap.
his synaptical leanings.
Very strange.
You know,
Very strange stuff. And so when I saw that piece with the brain work that was going on in 1966, 67, right around there,
Right.
I thought, oh, Obama's got really weird scars on his head. I wonder if there's something deeper to that story, and
Yeah.
you know, maybe he was part of also some other kind of experiment himself. Anyway,
well, Chris has seen a number of people who had lobotomies in her career at the psych hospital.
Yeah, and they would have these big scars here where they did the surgery.
it's a very dark film, by the way, this Minds of Men.
Is it?
So yeah, well, so I suggest. I mean, it's worth watching. You know, but it's 4 hours long.
Oh,
It
I guess
probably is good for
finish.
35, 40-minute doses.
Mhm.
yeah, you could take it in small bites.
To be honest with you, let's see. We got in the chat room. Let's see. Charles says about Obama. Did you see him at the basketball game in his black leather? Michael says Harry Lennox trained him to act speak. That's true. Harry Lennox was an actor. Basically said he taught Obama everything. And let's see, Cyborg. Edgardo says Cyborg.
Taught him to act like a black person.
Yeah. No. No. Taught him to act very presidential and very kind of eloquent and trained, so to speak. So, yeah. You guys, we wanted to talk a little about satire, right? Do you want to transition into that?
Yeah. Actually, you know, and I can tell a relatively quick story because it's kind of old, because it kind of folds back on what we're talking about with people preventing you from free speech. Let's see. So even when I was in college, I had myself and a couple of friends were running the literary magazine of the college. I wrote this really stupid short story, and the reason I was thinking about it is because we talked about milkshakes before, and it was called. So it has something to do with the milkshake. Our Rathskeller made these incredible ice cream milkshakes. So I did a little love story about two people falling in love over a milkshake, right? Just, you know, stupid story. Hopefully it's lost. But anyway, I used satirical names for the characters. So the woman in the story was Jewish, and the man in the story was Italian. And the Italian had a name, you know, like Banana Donna Zanzo, Binga Dinga Dingas, you know, whatever, something like that. And the woman's name was Nora, you know, Silvermean Goldsteinberg, something like that. So at the time, you know, I thought that was hysterically satirical, right? It, you know, take it for what it is from my 18-year-old mind. But the thing is, I got accused of anti-Semitism, when the story came out.
Way back then.
And, and I was like, I'm growing up, with the Catskill comedians, and the comedians making fun of themselves all the time,
And John Gotti in your neighborhood.
And John Gotti, we make fun of ourselves. And I just think it didn't even occur to me, that some would even think that. And I don't even know if anyone actually thought it or decided that they needed to think that. But anyway, so I was accused of anti-Semitism for having my character have this stupid name. All right. So multiply that by however many thousands of what's going on now. You and I probably grew up with like a lot of the Saturday Night Live stuff and those, incredible commercials. And I don't know.
Or Don Rickles.
Rickles insulted everybody.
Yeah.
Don Rickles was a he was an institution unto himself.
Even All in the Family. Archie Bunker.
Yeah, that's a different.
I know. Yeah, I do know.
That's a whole different trip. But yeah. But we grew up in an era of irreverence.
It's that type. So you think of Mel Brooks movies,
right?
Things like that. That was always very satirical. They're extremely popular when you actually went to movies.
Mm-hmm.
And so one of the things that seems to have happened yesterday is that Mad Magazine has ceased. I guess, I don't know if it's ceased altogether or it's just ceased being a print magazine at this point. And, most of us grew up with Mad Magazine and their complete irreverence, and they skewered everybody.
Right.
Yeah.
Okay. This is back from 1959.
Oh, really?
Yeah. This is the end of Mad, but it was an April Fool's issue, right? But I thought that this was kind of a decent visual for people. And Mad Magazine skewered everything. They would take contemporary movies, and then turn them into these very satirical kinds of, comic strips.
Right. And they had that little folding page in the back that became this whole, other thing. So there was, the artwork and all of that. And
Spy versus Spy.
That folding thing was that was like kind of some Matrix stuff. Here's an image,
right.
And then you fold it together, and there's this whole other thing going on.
That's right.
Yeah. Oh, it was great. It was the best part of it. It was the best part of it.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And Spy versus Spy is interesting because it's all about black and white duality and Gemini and spycraft.
It's always my favorite.
Yeah, and they were like, weren't they like birds? Weren't they almost looking like?
Well, they had very long, pointed noses, right? And their hats were like fedoras that were highly stylized, and they were always like trying to kill each other. That's what I remember.
Yeah.
Right. Nobody ever won.
I think Jasper's on your system.
Does Jasper have an implant that distorts your sound?
He might. He actually is. He was chipped. I had nothing to do with it.
Oh.
So I don't know what, so for us, that was the kind of thing, if you were even, I can't even say out there because it was mainstream for most of us growing up in the 60s and 70s.
You had Mad Magazine, there was a National Lampoon, and Cracked was the other.
Do you remember the National Lampoon Radio Hour? Did you listen to that?
Yeah, I did.
Nick James' Third Eye.
Yeah.
All that.
I mean, that's back when you actually, we're dating ourselves now, but you could actually buy comedy records.
Yeah.
Right.
I remember that.
Yeah. And there were, people like the Firesign Theater.
That's right.
There was this group called The Committee, which was kind of an early Firesign Theater group. And they all kind of come out of the Diggers, which is this political action group in San Francisco. And then there was a lot of that going on. You just buy, comedians had records and you listen to their records.
That's right.
And,
that's right. Even in college, and I had a radio show in college, I would interspersed or I would play something ambient. throw, you know, a comedian on top of it or something like that. You know, actually, Woody Allen had a great record.
Did he?
Had a great record. He used to play that a lot. Yeah. So, but yeah, all right. So you're talking about, so this feels like it's kind of an end of an era. We were talking about this woman, not woman, this young girl, who's about 10, I guess.
Oh,
who
Minnie.
goes by the name of Little AOC.
Yeah, I talked about it before. Played her on the show. And,
You're underwater again.
Yeah, I think it moved Jasper.
okay, buddy, you got to go.
Sorry,
Your implant is interfering with my show. There you go. All right, how's that? Is that any better?
yeah, it's better.
Okay.
And I guess, all right. So now you did talk about her on your show, and
Yeah, and I've talked about her. I played her video. Now she did a Ruth Bader Ginsburg too.
Oh, did she? I would love to see that.
She's a
Really?
very talented young girl.
She is very much so.
right.
And, yeah. So go ahead, Steve.
Well, this is her making fun of AOC crying at the border, which was, you know, her. So you talked about Corey going over to the border and his stunt. Well, her stunt was do that and talk about apparently nonsensical things about people drinking out of toilet bowls or being forced to drink out of toilet bowls and who knows what. So she's crying at the fence. And so this little girl,
Which turns out that is on the other side of an empty parking lot.
right.
Right.
So she's making fun of the AOC pout,
Of the histrionics.
you know, of that time. But we did watch a couple of her videos, and actually they were very
They
funny.
were brilliant.
They were very funny. She doesn't. I think the family writes them, and she performs them. I don't know, you know, and she just.
They said
has
that
this
she
way.
memorizes the script. So the family clobbers it all together, and then she memorizes it and she ad-libs. She'll tweak it as she goes.
But, you know, so she has herself a shtick. Anyway, the family is saying that they're shutting down all of their websites, all their Facebook, Twitter, YouTube pages because they've been threatened. They've gotten death threats and, you know, other kind of threats that they didn't specify, but you can imagine what they are, given the vitriol of the left at this point. So so I just found that really sad. Now you can say what you can say that what you were talking about was that there was a certain aspect or a certain point of manipulation with her. You said they were renting her out for parties and things like that, you know, and certainly I disagree with with doing that to kids, and that goes and that's got a long tradition going back to beauty pageants and all that stuff.
Right, which I'm not, I'm not thrilled with. Right.
I think it does more damage, than good, in general.
Right.
Especially,
But even if I disagree with the fact that I don't think it's a great activity for her, for the parents to basically, pimp her out, for lack of a better term. At the end of the day, I don't think it warrants the kind of vitriol that family received.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's, you become a public figure. I saw an interview with her. She doesn't seem to have friends who watch her things, so it doesn't seem to.
They actually had
sense.
her interviewed on Fox News.
Interesting.
And she didn't really even comprehend the questions that were being asked of her on the news program.
But that's kind of weird, though, don't you think? I mean, here she is. She's trafficking in kind of this political satire.
Very sophisticated too.
But yet she has very little comprehension with the kind of questions that they're asking her. It's almost disassociative in some ways.
Well, it is. I think she's just like a kid playing
roles,
playing a little part. Yeah. So it's a little game
So
for
it's
her.
memorization. She memorizes the words and the phrases
you know,
but she doesn't understand the content.
you know, I was in a school play in the second grade. You know, I had to memorize lines, you know, and do something. So, you know, it's not a stretch by any means.
Right.
But what they were doing was very funny. And there was a time, I think, when, you know, like remember all the what you call it, the mimics, you know, Rich Little and all those guys were hugely popular. And there was a time, I think, when, you know, it was actually a form of flattery. You know, you wouldn't get bent out of shape, you know, when someone was doing that to you. But I think those days are gone. We talk about the death of satire. It's the, you know, it's the death of the thick skin.
Well, I think we can't bring up the word Frankfurt School too often. I think that this runs through every thread that we've been talking about. We had the origins of all this kind of thinking with the Bolsheviks and the Frankfurt School and Tavistock Institute and Stanford Research Institute. And, you know, the whole series of Fringe is just, you know, flushing all that out for us right before our very eyes when we watch that series.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
This is the program. These are the bullet points. And we check.
Yeah.
And once you see that, you can't not see it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know, and I was thinking of Saturday Night Live, which was, you know, a staple for us, which comes out of the whole Monty Python thing. That, you know, the last, you know, when what's her name was doing the takeoff on Sarah Palin.
Oh, right.
The 30 Rock,
yeah,
woman on
whatever her
30
name
Rock,
is.
whatever her name is.
think
She
so.
they weren't even doing satire. She was just reading Sarah Palin's speeches.
Mm-hmm.
She was just reading them verbatim. They weren't even doing anything, you know,
Right.
and I haven't, you know, and I haven't really seen, you know, the whole Alex Baldwin thing, but, you know, so what, you know, what had a little imagination before is just sort of, you know, perfunctory stumping from one side or another.
And they're humorless, these people. You know, it's like this whole thing has just turned so dark and ugly that humor it's just been suffocated. They didn't even have to do anything. It's like talk about a wet blanket. It's just like a huge wet blanket on everything.
Yeah.
And there's been a flip because, you know, a number of years ago, you had, you know, Jon Stewart doing some interesting things, skewering the Bush administration. And it's just flipped. It's just flipped.
Well, it's because they got into power. They got into control.
Mm-hmm.
And now they theoretically have lost it for a moment. They don't want anybody to be able to use the same kinds of tools and techniques
good point.
that they had.
But most of the humor is actually coming on the right, and just like, and you can't talk to anybody about it.
I agree. There's this congresswoman from Florida. I'm trying to find the link, and she basically has come out and said that people who make fun of or antagonistic towards members of Congress should go to jail.
I saw that.
Yeah.
I thought, really?
Yeah. Satire.
Where are we in China?
Yeah, satire is hate speech.
Right.
You can't wasn't there something in Thailand where you could not make fun of the king and there was someone,
Or queen, yeah, they were in a taxi cab. There's two old British ladies.
They were in a taxi and they I don't know, they said something about.
There was a billboard with the king and queen on it, and they said something about the queen's dress.
They made a little joke, and the taxi cab driver just turned around and drove to the police station. And dropped off at the police station.
Something.
And how long ago was that? That was ages ago.
We heard about that when we were in Thailand, and that was
2001.
Yeah.
April 2001.
You know.
So we're in a really this is a slippery slope, because satire has always been one of those tools that have allowed us to have some ironic distance and to be able to poke fun at a situation in a way that I mean, that's what the fool would do with the king.
I was just
right?
going to say, we need to bring that back, the court
Right.
jester.
The court jester would come in, and the king had the court jester around
Yes.
for a reason. He was there for a reason. It kept the king kind of humble.
Mm-hmm.
And people who were around the court could see the court jester being there. And by the king employing the court jester, they kind of had a little more confidence in the king. The king wouldn't be taking himself so seriously.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And
Very important.
Yeah.
you know, I watch this what is it? It's a Jason Whitlock show, and have you ever seen his show at all?
Mm-hmm.
He does a sports show on CBS Sports or Fox One, and he has Marcellus Wiley on there. And about 6 months ago, he brought his uncle Jimmy onto the show, and Jason is he's a pretty smart guy. He's on Tucker Carlson every now and then. He used to be a writer for the Kansas City Star. And Uncle Jimmy does these bits at the end of the show, and he's a total fool. And most of the time, he's making fun of his nephew. And I know that Jason Whitlock brought him there because, number one, he's a relative and he wanted to employ his relative, which is fine. Number two, he hasn't poked fun at him because he thinks it's important.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. Because you're taking yourself, because in the end, you're taking yourself seriously, so seriously.
Right.
We all need a healthy adversary.
And I love the description in King Lear, the all licensed fool. You know.
Yeah, and if we don't have that, we're living in a society that's really gray and heavy and fascistic.
Right.
Well, it's getting that way. It's getting heavier every day.
You know, the Polish. There was an expression in Poland after the German invasion. So, you know, things are desperate, but they're not serious. You know, and that's how you get through it.
Right.
So, you know, we haven't cracked too many jokes today. Sorry, but I can't come up with anything.
Here's a couple of Mad Magazine.
Oh, really? Oh,
There
my.
it is.
So
really?
this is Jared as Alfred E. Newman,
Huh.
and that's recent.
Oh,
That's a recent cover.
yeah. Oh, and he's got overalls over his suit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I guess we watched some interview with Kushner, and boy, like zero gravitas.
Yeah, he's very flat affect.
Yeah.
He was talking about this, you know, his wonderful, you know, Middle East peace plan.
Yeah.
Yeah, the one that's going to save the Palestinians.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that no Palestinians had any involvement in devising.
Right, exactly. Here's another recent Mad Magazine
Oh, the
creation.
Buttigieg.
Right.
Oh my
So
goodness.
I mean, look, we're at the very least, right? They're equal opportunity satirists,
Exactly.
you know, for both sides.
Right. I think that's the one thing you could say about them, you know, that you really have to respect, you know, that they took nobody seriously.
So, you know, it's kind of an end of an era, and it's sad.
Well,
You know,
is it over? Is it dead? Have they won? Is satire actually dead?
I think satire is dangerous.
Or is it just under such heavy attack that
I think it's dangerous for the theoretical other side, whatever that is, right? And it's dangerous for them because it allows them to be put on their heels in a way that makes them feel uncomfortable, and yet shines a light on the truth.
Yes.
You know, it's a really good weapon. Satire is a really good political weapon.
It is.
Yeah, and if we take satire away, then, you know, we lose that kind of one wedge against a system that is so thin-skinned that it will just do everything in its power to stamp out any kind of moderate critique, right?
Right. And the satire, and what the satire prevents, you know, a complete black and white looking at everything. You know, it's up against that. It says, look, there are other ways to look at this, and throwing, you know, different shades and different colors on the whole any issue,
Right.
rather than the, the two pillars that exist with everything right now.
Right.
What I call the two false options that dominate every discourse right now.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good point. That it does open up that third possibility. So it gets us out of this entrenched kind of dualistic dialectic. So I think
that's the Trinity then. The Trinity actually allows for movement, whereas a duality, you only can, it's like a volley back and forth. You can't do anything. But with the Trinity, you have the possibility of that Vesica Pisces with the overlapping circles, right? And then that's the portal.
Yeah, you get music with a 3 with proportion. With the 2, you only get the octave. Right? You can only just repeat the same note over and over and over again. But once you use proportion and find those middle places, that's when you can actually make music.
Yeah.
So, and I guess I sent you a note. I don't know if you've watched any of the videos by this other young lady called Soph.
Yeah, I've got kind of mixed feelings about Soph now.
Us too.
Yeah. I mean, I thought some of the first things I watched were brilliant and kind of really taken by her ability to put things together and be, savagely politically incorrect. But now I've got some misgivings about her. What are you guys feeling about?
I think the operative word is savage.
Yeah.
And savage and innocence, the gears grind for me. They don't really mesh. So yeah, she's brutal. She's brilliant. And I wonder, okay, so there's Soph and there's this other little one, mini AOC. And I think, yeah, they talk about these new kids coming in and how different they are. And if those are an indication, I'm like, wow, they are like little adults, the way they are presenting. But emotionally, they can't possibly be in sync at that age.
Well, it's interesting because mini AOC, I'm assuming she's about 9 or 10. And that would put her right around like kind of the first degrees of Pluto and Capricorn kids. And those kids tend to be really, really grown up.
It's amazing.
Yeah,
because they're dealing. I mean, Capricorn is, it's like Benjamin Button being born really old when you're young, right?
Yeah.
So they're
jaw dropping, really.
So that's a generation. As they get older, they're going to be really very different, very, very different, and they're the ones that are being targeted for a lot of the trans stuff.
Yeah. Well,
now, Soph is Pluto and Sagittarius. And they're different too. They're more, I think they have the potential of being kind of more philosophically, hence the word Soph, right? Radical. So, but they're a bit different. But yeah, they're baked in different kinds of ways.
But they're brilliant. And there's this self-assurance that I certainly never had as a child. And they're so present. Clear and present, which is remarkable to me to see that in a child that age.
Well, Little AOC, I'm not sure if we can I think she's talented and gifted. How clear and present she is, I don't really know. I mean, she's still a child, right? I mean, and she's playing a role. And she's good at that role. She's sophisticated at that.
Right. So when I saw her in the interview on Fox News, then I saw the innocent child.
Right.
But even to be able to give that theatrical presentation, you have to have some kind of gravitas to pull that off. And
I think so. But again, we get into like this idea of kids, and I think they're a lot closer to their gifts in a lot of ways than as we get older and calcify and move away from them. And I think kids can be really ripe and have lots of things really ready and on tap. You know what I mean? But the Soph is a whole different character, and I'm beginning to wonder if there's somebody behind her. and you know,
Probably a good guess.
and if she's some kind of another kind of psychological, another psyop, I don't know. But I've just been having some misgivings about her lately.
I would say both of them are compelling, but troubling.
Mhm.
Yes.
Well, then we gotta bring another character into this discussion, and let's talk about troubling.
You.
This is Desmond, the trans kid, and he's definitely a Pluto and Capricorn kid, and he is known for being. He's known for going to basically adult gay bars and doing kind of, you know, burlesque strip teases without getting all the way down to his genitalia for money.
How was he allowed in at that age? I mean, there's that. How do you even get a child?
But there's no social outcry here. There's nobody, you know, slamming this kid's Twitter feed or.
But how do you get a child that age legally into a bar?
I don't know.
How's that even happen?
Sign a waiver? I don't know. I have no idea. His mother openly promotes him and promotes this lifestyle. And look, I mean, this is like completely freaking esoteric. It's completely occult.
Oh boy.
And really, really sad.
That even looks like Mouseketeer ears. The blue
Absolutely.
Absolutely. Puffballs.
Yeah. So, I mean, we're living in very strange times. And I talked about this the other day on my show with these kids, and he was part of the dialogue or what I was talking about with it or getting into. And, you know, Little AOC is a little bit different, obviously, maybe a little bit more wholesome, whatever, but it's still this level of these kids being kind of exploited and their innocence being sort of snatched away from them and being used, you know, to some degree, right? And whatever that, I mean, and this kid is obviously being pushed. He's a social program. He's more than just some kind of kid who's experiencing his trans freedom. This is a social program right here.
You know, there's not too much different from the look in his eyes than from, you know, some of these killers in these events. Once they pull him off of the events, I'm looking at the same. I'm looking at the same face, and unfortunately, I can't remember their names right now because they don't want me. Because once they do the event, they disappear. But you know, the mosque shootings, the shootings in California, you know, that same kind of face where they, you know, it's like that same look. It's that same soulless, vacant look.
Yeah.
Right.
You know, it gets, you know, I mean, how much, geez, you know, I mean, how human is he?
Yeah, what was the yellow, like a checkerboard design around his eye? Did you see that on the photo? It kind of blends in with his skin tone, but it's like a yellow.
Those are stars.
They're stars.
Lucky Charms. Pasted. They're Lucky Charms pasted to his. No, I'm just kidding. No, they're stars.
Okay.
They're stars.
Very painful.
No, it's disturbing. The whole thing's disturbing.
Oh, it's very deeply
Nobody
disturbing.
talks about it in disturbing tones. I mean, it's so wonderful. Oh, it's so wonderful. So wonderful that he can express himself. And why would you want to not allow a child to express themselves? It's just so no, it's disturbing.
Really sick.
It's disturbing for a 9-year-old to dress up like a girl and then dance in front of a group of men for money. I think it's right out of the Weimar Republic.
Yeah.
And this is part of your Frankfurt School tactics.
Right. They go back and they have it's the education, the sex education in the schools. It was all part of that, and I just it's just gotten.
And didn't Philip K. Dick say the Roman Empire never died?
He did say that the empire never died. Well, it is more than anything else. It's a Phil K. Dickian universe that we're in right now.
And it could get really worse. I mean, you know,
well, it doesn't seem to have any signs of slowing down.
I think
accelerating.
We're in a critical phase. I mean, I was watching this this commercial. It's a company called Postmates. I still don't know what Postmates does. I don't know what it does. I'm not even sure it's important for me to know what it does. What's important for me is to watch their commercials and be completely confounded by them. And there's this one, I think there's about 2 or 3 of them. The 2 that I've seen most recently is one, there's a guy that's cooking something and he needs some eggs. And he's a young Asian guy. And he goes to open his door and there's no eggs. And then his roommate is this weird, like, trans dude wearing Jodie Foster hot pants from Taxi Driver and looking like, you know, Divine from Pink Flamingos with a beard, eating these eggs. And just because the guy's eating his eggs and he's trying to be provocative and sexy. And it's like, what is going on here? Why, what is the symbolism and what is this commercial for? And at the end, I still don't know what the commercial's for.
I'm wondering, is the viewer the product?
And then Martha Stewart comes in, and it's some company she's associated with, Postmates, and it's like this. But this is where media is going now. I see it on Frontline's commercials. It's becoming more and more senseless, more and more graphic, stranger and stranger and stranger with every month now that we move theoretically forward in time. The content gets more and more bizarre.
Right, and more aberrant sexual. And it used to be, you know, they used to associate your product with something as wholesome as possible.
Right.
You know, mom, dad,
Apple pie,
son, daughter, at home.
baseball,
You know,
softball.
that you always would have your product associated with that.
No, those days are over. Those days are over. And even like body shape and body type. Like, you know, to the extreme, we would see people who were chiseled or buffed, or, you know, women who had almost impossible figures.
Like us.
You know? Right. Well, now the image, the body image and the face image for people on commercials is changing drastically. And you're seeing more and more people who look very odd.
Yes.
They're very odd looking, or their body shapes are very odd and very different. And, you know, I guess that, you know, hey, let's celebrate people who don't look like textbook, you know, beautiful or handsome. It's okay. But it's almost like it's being done now with this idea that we're going to just make everything this distorted hall of mirrors that you're looking through.
Right.
Walking through. You know, you walk through and all of a sudden your face goes like this. And, you know, that's kind of what's being reflected to us.
Right. So maybe to just kind of take this where, you know, to the behind all that is what we're always talking about, because it's all ugliness. Everything is ugliness. The speech is ugly. I mean, I think that's what disturbs me about Soph, as interesting and as compelling as it is. It's ugly speech. It's very ugly. You know, and you know, as we know, as everyone must know who's listened to us with more than 10 minutes, you know, we have to cultivate beauty in every way, and beauty is not, you know, a physical thing, and it's part, because you've mentioned this too, it's a spiritual war. We're in a spiritual war. Spiritual war is behind all of this.
Right.
There's just no way you can talk about this on just this basic, bland human level. These are just human beings. Oh, this is how they are, because that's also part of the Frankfurt School. Sorry. You know, they want it to be just this: humans are bad, but this is how we fix it, by making them act in this particular way. But it's not that. It goes past that, and which is why, I mean, I find it really interesting also that a lot of good things are coming from the Christians, where the water is going. You know, as far as that goes. Now, I had my break with the Catholic Church when I was probably about 12 or something, because I just nothing could be more hypocritical to me when I was growing up and watching that. But, you know, that's me, and I find fault all over the place. But there are moral teachings within that, and there is a spiritual center within that people can find, as covered over as most of it is. But so that's one level of it, and I think it goes a lot deeper than that, because I just think there are spiritual beings of some sort that you know, I've encountered here and there, that are bringing behind, like that kid that you just showed. I mean, that just, you know, you don't see a human behind that, you know, you see something really scary, really dark, and from a place that's not here.
Right.
And so this is, you know, so again, so that's maybe why we should cue the garden video.
Yeah,
because,
palate cleanser.
because you know, because this is the real battle, and the battle is within us, because they're trying to make us like that. You know,
Right,
like you're saying, the commercial is compelling, and you watch it, and it gets into you. You know,
I wouldn't say it's compelling at all. I would say it's bizarre, but it does get into. It's like, why is this happening? Why are they? Well, it's because they want to distort everything. It's
Don't
all
you think
about.
it brings up like a morbid curiosity? It's like you want to look at it because it's so morbid. It's like, what am I seeing?
Well, I sure know what the company's name is. It's Postmates. I don't know what the hell they do. So they were able to, you know, drill that name Postmates into my head, because I watched their two commercials that are just completely bizarre. And yeah, but I think, you know, it's like the Lord of the Flies wants to reign over a pile of filth, you know, and that's what they're doing to their very best, and their very best efforts to turn this country and this world into is one gigantic pile of filth, except for those who live behind their closed gated communities. And those places won't be, you know, they'll have their own little private Idaho.
yeah, they'll have their simulacra.
Yeah, yeah.
A little simulacrum of beauty.
So the antidote to that is beauty, truth, and knowledge. So when we were doing our sacred geometry classes, we always opened the class with this saying, may we be guided by truth, may beauty be revealed to us, and may it result in the good. So that has to be our mantra. That has to be what we live by. So be guided by truth. And if you're guided by truth, then you can see through the lies. And then beauty is a revelation. It's not a thought process. It's revealed. You have to uncover it. It is uncovered. You don't uncover it. It becomes uncovered. It's revealed to you. And the result is the good. Right now, there's nothing but occlusion.
The word for truth in ancient Greek is aletheia. Lethe was the lake of forgetfulness that we drink from before we come into this world, to forget all that we knew. But so truth is aletheia, is to remember. It's to remember who we are and what we already know, what we knew before we came here. So to remembering, and you can put that the other way, to remember, to put together.
So I think we have to just be relentless in going back to that constantly, and drinking from that well of remembrance, and not the well of forgetfulness.
Yeah, I would agree with that. And yeah, I mean, for me, I feel like, you know, we really lost the plot when we got into sort of the Crowley-esque version of personal navigation in life. Do as thou wilt. And I lived that way. I lived for a good part of the 90s and even up through some of the 2000s. I was kind of living by that credo, and it was very interesting. I had a lot of really interesting experiences.
Oh, sure.
And I also, you know, had a lot of pain, and I know that I was involved in causing some pain to other people during that time too. And now, you know, from this perspective in my life, there's no way I could live that way anymore. I just couldn't do that anymore, because I think we have to be accountable to this thing inside of us that makes us very aware of our thoughts and our actions and what we do and how we relate to other people. Like, there are repercussions you just can't live how you theoretically just, want to be free. I mean, I get it, but I think to be free takes a lot of responsibility. And it's just,
Mhm.
it's been a big kind of awakening for me over the last year and a half to 2 years, the import of that. And I don't want to, sound like I'm preaching or anything, but if we lose sight of the fact that in our souls, we're accountable for our actions and our thoughts and our deeds,
Mhm.
and we just get away with shit, we're on a slippery slope.
Yeah, I'll say something.
Yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
The text that we studied a lot when we studied yoga is the Bhagavad Gita. I spent a lot of time with that particular book. And what's interesting concerning Do It Thou Wilt, right? So it's a story, and in this story, this character Arjuna, he just has this, revelation of the Godhead in all beings, in everything. He's brought along through the course of it to this revelation, and then the end of the book was embodying and incorporating that revelation into his life, and which for him was the body of Krishna. And at the end of the Bhagavad Gita, Krishna says to him, "Now that you know what you know, do what you will." So it's just not just, it couldn't have said that at the beginning.
Right.
Just go do what you want. But now
Right.
that you've gone through all these stages, now you can do what you will, because
Mhm.
what you will is informed by this knowledge and this wisdom, and you've incorporated it into you. You know what needs to be done and why.
And that's good.
And
So
that's the
that,
holding of everything together.
yes, you act as if the maxim is that you are to act as if you are holding the whole world together. So all of your actions are geared toward that cohesiveness.
Loka samgraha
Loka samgraha.
in Sanskrit.
So loka meaning world, sam meaning around, and graha means to grasp. So loka samgraha. But so what you just said provided a platform for what I was thinking about. Do what thou wilt is the extent of the law. Is that it?
Whole of the law.
The whole of the law. That to me is a maxim for reifying the ego, for concretizing the ego. The more you do what you want to do, just willy-nilly, that just bounces back and makes more of an ego coating that becomes harder and harder and harder to break free of. So you're concretizing or reifying the ego, like just, doing what you will without any regard for anyone else. Like you exist in a bubble, like your actions don't affect anyone else, when in reality, we're all connected. All of my actions affect everything. And that goes back to the jeweled net of Indra, that when you pull on that net of Indra, I had a dream one time where the world had this net around it, like the jeweled net, like a fish net with jewels at each juncture point.
Right.
And when I pulled on it, the whole world moved, everything moved. And that's the reality, that everything we do is connected to everything else. So by you doing what you will, you're affecting the whole world. You have to take responsibility for that.
Yeah, I think that there can be things that you can learn from that perspective. Like I learned a lot. I would definitely consider it a left-handed path, and I'd have moments quite often of obliteration of various forms, and having to deal with those moments of obliteration. But I think what happens ultimately, if you just keep going down that path, and you don't, I think there's a flip, there's a switch to the other side, and the other side is, you begin to see much more clearly from a different perspective that even though there are some things that are interesting here, ultimately I think it's a cul-de-sac, or that you want to have kind of a higher perspective, or a more kind of inclusive, broader kind of spiritual, what's the word I'm looking for? Portal, vector, right? And then it becomes more interesting when you have to take things into account. Because I think the West Africans have a really interesting kind of idea around spirituality. And they talk about this concept called Ashe. And Ashe is this spiritual force that theoretically runs through things. And if you have accumulated a lot of Ashe, then you can attain positions of leadership. You have leadership abilities. And so how do you cultivate Ashe? You do through two activations or two activities. One is through what they call coolness. And coolness is the ability to respond to life's crises in a way that are level-headed.
Mhm.
So you don't lose your shit, right? And then the other one is through the development of character. And when you develop character and you display coolness, you accumulate Ashe, and Ashe is power.
Mm.
And if you wind up basically, pissing your character away, you'll never get it. Never get that kind of life force and the potential to actually do, profound or deep or impactful things. So I thought when I read that made a lot of, that was many years ago. And I still work with that to this day, the development of character and who are you under pressure, right? And
doing it for the community.
Yeah.
It's not for, and that's the other thing that got shifted when all the Eastern traditions came over here. It became like, oh, my enlightenment, and that sort of stuff.
Right.
But, you're doing it for everything.
Well, maybe that's
Exactly.
that's the true communism. That would be the high point of communism for the community.
Well, I think it's the true spirit of Aquarianism.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And not the lower vibration version of it.
Yeah, and I think that's another transition that you've probably thought about, this movement out of the hierarchical, guru system of the past, whatever, couple thousand years, however, and this Aquarian, teacher within. I think that's the direction it has to go, because it's, again, that whole system got abused incredibly.
That got corrupted.
Just like that was the crazy movie about Rajneesh.
Yeah.
Oh gosh, yeah.
Oh, Rajneesh is interesting.
The Wild Wild. He's a
fascinating
very interesting character, but look what came out of it, right?
Oh yeah. No, he was fascinating. Rajneesh was he had it, man. He had tapped in. He totally tapped. Like I looked at his chart and I could see, what was going on in his chart at a specific point in time. When he was really, like there's this video of Rajneesh, which I watched over and over and over again for, I don't know, like a dozen times. I just kept watching it. And it's about a 4 or 5 minute clip. And you see him, it's in Pune, and you see him and he's there and he's got a woman behind him, a woman on the side, and a woman in front of him. And the woman behind, it's a black and white video. The woman behind him, he's got one hand on her third eye. And the woman next to him, he's got one hand on her third eye. And the woman behind him is just all blissed out. And the woman up to the side of him is, doing these gyrations and everything. And he's like, tapping into their circuits, right? And then he takes his hand from the woman behind him and he places it on the third eye of the woman to the side of him, and he doesn't move that hand, right? I mean, he keeps pressure there. And then he moves the other finger to this woman in front of him who's just sitting there, and all of a sudden you watch her and her eyes just go straight back into her head. Yeah. And then off to the corner, you can see this other woman, and she's just kind of like this and laughing and giggling and carrying on. And then the camera zooms out, and then you see all these people who are just losing their minds. And I'm like, what was going on there?
Right.
Is that Shaktipat?
Well,
yeah. It was seriously on. And this
He was
guy,
making physical contact?
that's right. And he was sending these women into these like crazy ecstatic states. But they weren't the only ones. Everybody else was kind of in their version of it, right?
Huh.
And so and that was when he was in Pune. And during that time, Neptune was transiting all of his Sagittarian. He was a Sagittarius. He was transiting his Sagittarian planets. So he was getting this Neptunian. He had a grand trine with Pluto and Leo. And where was Jupiter? Jupiter was in Aries. And he has a Sagittarian sun. your Grand Fire Trine in his chart. Sun, Pluto, Jupiter. Okay, this guy was switched on. He had Neptune going over his Sag planets, wide open, right? But here's what happens. Neptune eventually leaves Sagittarius and it goes into Capricorn. And that's when he leaves Puna and he goes to the United States and he gets into money and Rolls Royces and who knows what else happens to him, right? So it goes from this Sagittarian thing to this Capricornian thing and power. And you can just see it. Anyway, but you're right. The guru thing is over. It's done.
Over.
It's done.
Had its day.
Yeah, it's done. Totally done. And, you know, do you guys watch Owen Benjamin at all?
A little bit we did.
I started to, and then I was like, he drones on so much, so I stopped.
Yeah,
but go ahead.
But I think he's interesting. He's a Gemini. He obviously he's very loquacious, and you know he does these 3-hour, you know, lives and stuff like that. But the one thing I will say about Owen Benjamin is that he's done this major pole shift in terms of his belief system. In terms of he was in LA, he was a comedian. You know, he was hanging out with Joe Rogan. He just has completely disassociated himself.
Yeah, now he's like back to the land.
Yeah, yeah. And the reason I'm bringing him up is because you know he talks about God and truth a lot now. That's a big part of his, you know, dialectic. And I would say that he's attempting to find this teacher or the guru or the God within. And it's all predicated and based on truth, which is really what he's trying to kind of evolve towards.
Okay.
And I just bring him up because I think he's an interesting cipher in a lot of ways for what's going on. And it doesn't get a lot of press, but something is happening. And I do think people are waking up. And people are coming into this deeper kind of relationship with, you know, call it God, call it whatever you want.
Good.
I think it's happening. It's happening.
Good.
But it's YouTube's certainly not going to broadcast it.
Well, YouTube, they're so lost.
No, but yeah, I've been, you know, prophesying a post-religious world. And I don't know if it's in our lifetime or you know, post certain religions world at some point. I think it has to go past that.
I just have trouble with the organized religion.
Well, that's because it's always salvation from without. You know, they control. They're all control systems, and that's and whether it's that or the government or satire, or whatever it is, we have to be our own little control systems. You know.
I wanted to play this little piece of video. This was from the V for Vendetta movie because I thought it was kind of important to our discussion on satire. Can I play this for you guys real fast?
Yeah, sure.
Okay, so let me share the screen.
Yeah,
and
we haven't seen this since it came out.
Okay.
Oh, this is a new one?
No, we haven't seen the movie. We haven't seen any of it since this.
Since the beginning.
So the idea here is that there's a chancellor who slightly resembles Hitler, played by John Hurt, and they're watching. He's a present. Okay, so there's a presenter, and what's her name? The actress. I'm totally spacing out her name now.
In the movie, I can't remember.
I'm not
Black Swan. What's her name?
Natalie Portman.
Natalie Portman, thanks. So he and Natalie Portman are watching that day's production at home. So this is Satire, and Satire at probably its most brilliant kind of exposition. But then what happens to the presenter later is that the chancellor doesn't like it and goes to his house and hunts him down and beats him up and tortures him and ultimately kills him. So this is from V for Vendetta. So he's basically saying that I changed the script for today's show, and I got it past the censors. So now they're bringing on the chancellor, but it's not the chancellor. It's a guy that looks like him. Everybody's watching. And he's about to poke fun at him. So here come these golden girls out. They bring milk. Everybody thinks it's very funny because he has milk at night before he goes to bed. And they're like, how could he do this? How could he do this? How dare he does this? And then right there is V, right? Because they're trying to find him. He's right there in his midst. And he places a cigar there. And he takes the cigar and it explodes. Everybody's laughing, right? And look, there he is. There he is. Oh, I'm here. I'm playing washboard in the band. That wasn't that funny. So they're making fun of the king, right? That's what's happening. They're making fun of the king. And the presenter and V are the fools. Now it becomes kind of slapstick. Running around. Everybody's laughing, carried on. There's a gorilla, the Golden Girls. Slips on a banana, piles on. She's like, oh my God, what's going to happen to you? So now he gets V, and look, oh my God, look at that.
Right, the prisoner.
There's V's. Oh. Everybody's howling, laughing. There's a fight that ensues. The shock troops kill him. Kill them both.
Oh my.
He goes down. Everybody's howling. They think it's
They're still
hysterical. Yeah. And
So the broken glass, was that the actual chancellor
yes,
breaking his glass, and he's pissed now?
that's right. And so what happens then is that guy who's the presenter meets a pretty nasty end. So Satire, there it is on full display,
Right.
As it's supposed to kind of create, it's supposed to cut the tension.
Right.
Cut the tension. But we're at a point in time now where the cultural critics want no part of that anymore.
Well, isn't it shoot the messenger?
Yeah.
Yeah. That's the message is, don't step out of line. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Steve, you've got an interesting kind of funny story.
Well, do we want to do the story now?
You
Or
want to do the story?
Yeah, I guess we're kind of winding down here.
Yeah. Play the story out.
Well, it's kind of not apropos
Of
too many-
anything, really.
of anything, but it's I think it's maybe just a little lighter note or anything, right? So very quickly, I have a cousin. She's a professional pool player. She's actually the only woman to beat Minnesota Fats. Okay, the memory of this was triggered from from seeing a picture of a pool table at a hotel site. Anyway, so my cousin Francine, we grew up together. Everybody in my family plays pool. My father was a hustler at 16 in Brooklyn. He and his brothers used to hustle in pool halls and things like that. And he didn't go to school a lot back then. So my cousin and I grew up. She's 3 years older than me. We were always playing pool. And then one day she went off to Queens College and she got really, really good. And eventually she's now the only female master teacher of pool, of which there are maybe a dozen, maybe 15 of these people at this level of master teacher. She was called in to do the pool scene in Carlito's Way, if you remember that movie with Al Pacino. So, she designed the shots and that and things like that.
She trained him.
Right. She trained Al Pacino, who she said was really, really nice.
A gentleman.
But very intense. Anyway, so her place she operated out of was this pool hall in Manhattan. And, you know, I grew up in Ozone Park, which is next to Howard Beach, and both of those are fairly mafia-controlled neighborhoods. So she's in Woodhaven, which is just north of that, where she grew up. My uncle is still there. Her father, he's in his 90s. Anyway, so Francine's, you know, she practices, she teaches at the pool halls, you know, practice for tournaments and what have you. There's a guy there who everyone knew was John Gotti, the famous Godfather,
Right.
the Dapper Don, as they called him, because he was always dressed immaculately. Everyone knew that's where his driver would hang out there, in between, you know, having to do anything with the Don. So, you know, she just knew this guy. So she's shooting around, and they had one of those video poker games. So she goes, Fran, come on, need a little luck, you know, put my whatever it was, my quarter in here. So she goes, sure. So she puts a quarter in, and he wins something like $900 out of the machine, right? So he's thrilled. He's thrilled. Oh, Fran, let me take you out to dinner. She's like, no, that's okay, you know. No, I got to take you out. Oh, okay. Well, look, at least let me drive you home, you know, or, you know, but I know this really nice, you know, Italian restaurant. This is in Manhattan, so of course, to get a ride home is, you know, a nice thing, in the Don's limousine. So anyway, he won't stop. She says, okay, we'll just go get something to eat. So he takes her to this restaurant in Howard Beach, and the guy's name I think is Lenny. We'll just call him Lenny. So they go to this Italian restaurant, and, you know, as soon as Fran sees it, she knows, you know, this restaurant is where the boys hang out. So, you know, they drive up there, and she's like, you know, Lenny, there's nobody here. That's right. You can just drive me home. There's nobody here. She says, no, don't worry. So goes in, you know, knocks on the door, everything slides open, whatever, you know, get the password. She goes inside the restaurant. There's nobody there, but you can see a side room lit with a bunch of murmuring going on, a bunch of guys. So they put her in a booth. The guy who owns the restaurant comes over. Hey, you know, what are you doing? And he starts bringing out like dish after dish of food. And of course, you know, my cousin's stomach is in as many knots as you can possibly tie one into, you know.
Right.
You know, they're bringing out the calamari, the antipasta, the strombolis, you know, the whole thing. And she's just like, you know, this food is not working for her at this point, you know. So she's just eating. What's the matter? You're not hungry? Oh, come on, I'll get something else, you know. And so,
right.
So Lenny goes, yeah, just wait here. I got to go talk to the boss. So he goes, he comes back a few minutes later, and he goes, the boss wants to talk to you. She's like, oh, please, no. So she can't say no, right? So she goes over, and there's the next room. She looks, long table, about 20 guys on it, you know, and there's John Gotti. Everyone knows who John Gotti is, sitting at the head of the table. You know, and she said, I know. So this was like after midnight. And the thing that struck her was how like perfectly starched and fresh his shirt was. So like, here he is, like after midnight, he's still looking like immaculately clean.
Right.
You know, she said it's just, that's what really struck her about him. So he goes to her, oh, what, you know, well, I heard you know, we got Lenny some luck. She says, nothing, really nothing. So, you know, she says, what's your name? You know, she goes, Fran. And what's your last name? Crimi. And he just nods his head. Anybody know any Crimis here? Going down the table.
Right.
One guy at the end of the table says, yeah, Angelo Crimi from Massapequa. He's a good guy. Right? Angelo Crimi is my father from Massapequa.
Oh, wow. That's funny.
So she goes, so they go to, you know Angelo Crimi? So yeah, he's my uncle. Oh, okay, good. I'll talk to you later. So Fran goes back, you know, and then, no, come on, eat. She's like shitting bricks, right? She's saying, oh, this can't lead anywhere good. So a couple of minutes later, Lenny comes back. Hey, the boss wants to talk to you again. So goes back to the room, and he says, really, really nice proposition for you. What we'll do is, just give me your bank account number, and we're just going to put $100,000 in it, for a couple of months. And then we take 90,000 out and the 10,000's yours. And she's like, oh no. It's like, how do you say no? Well, Fran was very lucky because in her last job, she was actually a forensic accountant for the city of New York.
Mm.
And she said, and she was able to say, they're going to be looking at my accounts, and, it's just not going to work that way. They're going to find out. So as much as I'd love to, I really can't do that. And he's like, okay. And that was basically the story. She got driven home, avoided having to refuse an offer she couldn't refuse.
Destiny turning on a quarter.
Right. And so there's, so there's the whole odd thing with my father, who had a gas station in Brooklyn and, had no real ties, except when he retired, he ran this little pinochle club for the local numbers guy. So he ran he just made sure there was, sandwiches and beer in the refrigerator, and, just, I don't know. And the guy gave him a couple of bucks for that. So he was never involved in anything as far as I know anyway. But, the thing is, when my father died at the funeral, it's like all these guys start coming out to me.
That was interesting.
Hey, I'm Joey Cheese. I'm Jimmy the Fish.
Seriously,
I swear to God,
kidding.
these are these guys that started to come up to me.
Joey the
like,
Fish.
Oh my God, this is like right out of the fucking Sopranos, So anyway, so that's my brush with them, and
That's
Fran
funny.
got out alive, and Gotti's gone, and what have you. But so that would have been like late '80s, maybe.
Oh yeah.
I've got something new to add to your bio now.
I think so.
How would you word that, Robert?
Yeah, they'll be flocking to Texas now.
I'd say mob approved.
Mob approved. That's right.
It's got real bona fides.
MA.
Well,
That's a new MA.
That flash mob, maybe.
So here, let me just segue into this. So
I just love that. Just the story is a great.
That's a good story. The thing that's interesting is that what happens if that quarter doesn't win, right?
Yeah.
None of that ever goes down.
Right.
She doesn't get in the car. She doesn't have to eat the food. She doesn't have to come face to face with Gotti.
Right.
Deal with her own kind of, moral dilemma.
And live by her wits.
Yeah, it's just all based on a quarter.
It's a cosmic quarter, isn't it?
Yeah, interesting. So I wanted to transition just to tell people about this event that the Krimis are going to be at here in Texas in October. And if you want to hear more salty stories from Steve, you can do that. So
I'll have to make some up.
So basically what it is, it's kind of like an extension of what we do here on the show, but in real time with real people and kind of a real gathering. And it's going to happen on the 11th, 12th, and 13th of October. I have a link up on the robertphoenix.com site. I'm going to put a link in to the actual message or the comments part or description of the show. And so Steve and Krys are going to be there, and Krys is going to teach us a little bit about dowsing, right, Krys?
Yeah, we'll do the basics, and we'll figure out the logistics. See if people want to bring their own, if they have pendulums or dowsing rods or what have you.
Lots of things can be used. Little necklace things can be used. Really.
And we're gonna do that out at Enchanted Rock.
Yeah, that sounds great.
Magical place. That's one of the activities that we've got. We're going to be hiking around the rock in early Saturday morning on the 12th. And by the way, that's a full moon weekend. That's the harvest moon. Wow. Right. And so we'll be out there. And then.
How early, Robert?
A little early.
How early, Robert?
Oh, early, fairly early. It gets hot here in Texas.
Like what's early, Robert?
Oh, Plus, he's an hour earlier than us, Chris. So you're
I'm
gonna.
thinking of sometime around 9 a.m. We're all going to jump in vans and
Okay.
drive across the hill country and get to Enchanted Rock. And then Stephen Kent, who is a world-renowned didgeridoo player, is going to be doing a private concert for us. Steve is an old friend of mine, and he's agreed to come out. And Steve is a huge Stephen Kent fan, right?
I am. He's amazing.
So this is another thing that kind of synchronistically and magically happened. And at first I was going to, have Stephen do like a presentation on breath and spirit and power. And then I thought it'd be much better if Steve interviewed Stephen Kent. And I told Stephen, by the way, Steve, and he's totally into it. So we're gonna broadcast that live. A lot of this stuff will be broadcast, live on YouTube. So if you're not there, you'll be able to experience it. We'll stream some of this live. So Steve will interview Stephen Kent. Krys will be doing her thing out at Enchanted Rock. We're going to have astrology, Heather Elin with Astrology with Heather. She and I will be teaming up and doing some stuff. We're also going to have this guy, Glenn Streeter. He's going to be there. He's been on Regina Meredith's show a couple of times. And I've just connected with Glenn, and he's totally cool. Like Glenn and I have had some really great conversations.
Nice.
And Glenn does a lot of quantum healing stuff. So I'm going to try to pair him up with Emily, and because Emily does some healing stuff too. So we'll have some pairing up, some individual stuff. More like discussions versus workshops, but people will get to participate, and it's going to be a lot of fun. And we're going to have Texas style cuisine a couple of nights. So that's happening. And I'm thrilled to be able to, put this together so that we can all meet each other.
Yeah.
That's what I'm looking forward to most.
Forward to that.
I still haven't met you, right?
That's right.
No, I haven't met each other.
Will we recognize you when we meet you?
Yeah. Hopefully, if I'm not wearing a mask,
Uh-huh.
like my cat mask or V for Vendetta. No, of course, of course. Yeah. What I'd love to do is I would love to do this on a yearly basis, and we can, and it doesn't even have to be in Texas. It could be, maybe next time we're in North Carolina or, I would just love to have kind of a gathering where people get together and, have FaceTime, real time.
Right. Especially if we like each other after this.
I know, right? This is it. This is the maiden cruise, the maiden voyage.
Right.
So I'll have more information. It's already on my website, but I'll put some links here in the description for the show. And
so are there like convention rooms available for?
So here's the lab. We're gonna have our own room, right? And there are two convention rooms joined into one. So we're gonna have a lot of our activities from that main room. We can split them up, which I probably will, so we can have simultaneous things going. But I think the group will probably like to spend a lot of time together, get as much information together. So if we have to split them up, we can.
Mm-hmm.
But we've got a big room, and we're going to have two of our meals catered in to those rooms. And then we're going to have a Sunday brunch catered poolside. They've got a really nice pool at this place.
I saw that on the site.
Yeah.
Beautiful.
Nice.
It looked like a nice place.
Yeah, I think it's going to be fine. It's going to be really packed. What's interesting is that there's going to be a big Christian group coming in on Sunday. So it must be the weekend for that sort of, kind of spiritual gathering, so to speak. Okay. And
We'll
start
a new religion.
So we start our own thing.
Religion.
Yeah, start our own. Yeah. So anyway, that's what's going to happen, and it's going to be fun, And so the Stephen Kent concert, that's going to be off-site. I'm working on a venue. I've got vans, so if we need to go, I've got vans we can all get into. A couple of cars will probably drive too. Mm-hmm. But once you get there, if you don't have a car, don't worry about it. We're not going to do a lot of off-site stuff. I see two off-sites, one to Enchanted Rock and one for the concert, and everything else will probably be pretty self-contained.
So how far is Enchanted Rock from the hotel?
Enchanted Rock is probably, it's about 30 miles, 25 miles from Kerrville to Fredericksburg, and then another probably 25 miles from Fredericksburg to Enchanted, about 50 miles.
She's already obsessing about getting up.
Oh, you don't want to miss Enchanted Rock, Krys.
No.
Oh no, I wouldn't miss it for the world. I
Yeah.
just need to know.
Yeah.
You need to prepare mentally.
You get into
I'm
training.
not an early riser by
Get
nature.
into training a couple weeks ahead of time.
Okay.
I think so. I
okay.
think so.
Start getting.
We'll set all the clocks.
I can make it happen. When
We'll
I
set
have
all
to.
the clocks to Texas time here.
Hey, when we left Istanbul, we had to leave at 3 a.m. So
true.
I
And you get your Indiana Jones hat too. That'd be
Yeah,
perfect.
maybe I should go back
I
and
think
see
so.
if it's still
I
there.
think so.
You owe it to yourself.
Yeah.
Let's check in. Let's check in with the people in the chat room and see what they're saying. Ani says, "Krys read my mind. How early?"
Honey, we're sisters in the sleep world.
Rhonda, early dawn with hiking boots. How far will the hike walk be at Enchanted Rock? Well, that's a good question. So I haven't really figured that out yet, but my sense is that there are options. Well, it's not in my sense. I know there are options with Enchanted Rock. So if you want to just hang out and kind of be, because we'll grab tables and stuff. We'll have an area there, and
they have like a picnic area.
yeah, we're gonna have lunch there. So yeah, and so I'll try to have it all kind of nicely shaded off and everything. So if you just want to hang at kind of our base camp, you can do that. Okay. If you want to get up on the rock, you can do that too. And the rock is it's about like that, and you can hike up that thing. Or if we want to, we can take another route and kind of go around the rock, where I encountered a bunch of really interesting stones and petroglyphs, and so there's some options. And what we might do is we might do something along the lines of get together, Krys, maybe get into the dowsing thing, right? And then we may take a little hike kind of in this one area. We won't do the whole loop because that's a big hike, and check out some of these other rocks. And then after that, if you want to go scale the big rock, you can go do that. So that
hiking trails.
Yeah. So you have some free time, go explore, come back. We'll have lunch. We'll get back into the vans, go to the hotel, and we'll jump into the pool. And splash around, right? Does it sound fun?
It just sounds really good.
Yeah, we're really looking forward to it.
I haven't done anything fun in a long time. So.
Right, and there'll be plenty of knowledge passed along. There'll be plenty of things that we can share and bring to the table. And of the health side, Emily has kind of her thing on the health tip, and Glenn is into this quantum healing, and then you guys and me, and there's plenty to share and to talk about. And there's a lot of really smart, gifted, and spiritually switched on people that are part of this little experience. And
big time.
That's why we're attracted to it.
And if somebody inside of this little world wants to present something or bring something to the group, I'm open.
Great.
Right? Shoot me an email. Tell me, hey, I really would love to do something. We don't have, clearly time is going to be something we have to map out. But I'm really open. If you got something you want to bring to the table, let's talk about it. We'll find some time to do that.
That's good. That's good.
Yeah. I want to be
All right. Very good, Robert.
Terrific.
So we were going to cover your garden stuff, and obviously we didn't. But I'm going to put them.
Do that another time.
I'll put them in links too. People wanted to see your latest forays into the garden.
Yeah, the summer version of the garden. We did do a couple more videos, but yeah, they're on Vimeo. Yeah. Actually, Logo Sophia has a Vimeo channel. I'm actually trying to move all of our videos off of YouTube onto that. So there's the latest of that, pictures of bears running around in our trees, film, whatever, videos. So, that's worth people checking out, and maybe I'll put a link onto that to just our whole Vimeo page. That's nice.
We were going to talk about some 5G updates in the Asheville area, but maybe.
Do you want to just get into them real quick? Do you want to just give people kind of a synopsis?
Real quickly, what's happening is, Duke Energy is supposedly giving you an opt out of the smart meters. And it's very expensive. It's like $15 a month plus like $170 something like that to opt out of it. But if you get a doctor's note saying, that it would make you ill, to have the smart meters on you, then they're required by law not to charge you. So we had friends, and as you can imagine, it's not easy to find a doctor who's going to
Some doctors
just
flat out
do that.
refuse.
Doctors refuse
give
to
the
see
note.
people. A lot of our friends don't even see doctors like us.
We don't even have a doctor.
But anyway, so a couple of our dear friends, they went through all the trouble because they had some testing done on the meters that were on their house, and the EMFs were just were horrific. So they went through all this trouble, went to a doctor, got the notes, filled out all the forms. So Duke's put on a new meter, and it, for all intents and purposes, it's not like an old analog meter where you actually have dials on it the way it used to have, but it is, a digital printout, but it wasn't pulsing the way, our meter does now, which is not technically a smart meter, but it is a broadcasting meter. Turns out that they went and had it tested. The EMFs pulsing from that meter are beyond the range of the equipment that the people brought out to test it. Okay, so Duke is full of shit. They're giving people meters that are still sending something out.
Right.
And apparently it's happened to enough people who have tested it that that these groups are formed, and so we'll keep on top of that, what's going on with that. But sadly, Duke is fucking people over right now, and so our friends now, they have to deal with that on some level now.
They have to go to a whole other level
of working with that. So the whole concept was, you're paying this extra money to have someone come and read your meter, supposedly. In many places, the old days, you just read it yourself and send it to them.
Mm-hmm.
They come out once a year, and, and if there was an adjustment, if you were messing around, they'd know. You don't have to have someone coming out every month if you don't want to. So,
it's all a lie.
So that's sadly what's going on with that over here. We had thought at least you had an option, but apparently it's still bad.
I think they just depend on people not following up on their honesty.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's what's happening. Yeah. They think that, okay, so we can pull a fast. It sounds like they're pulling a fast one.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, and also
they are pulling a fast one. It's a bait and switch.
Yeah. It's awful.
Yeah.
And also quickly, we're going to start a sacred geometry drawing series with Emily on Off Planet. So we're going to record our first one. So I don't know, that'll be up maybe sometime during the month, maybe. And so it's going to be traditional sacred geometry analog drawing. And
compass, ruler, pencil.
Wow, that's cool.
Real basic class in sacred geometry, what it's about, not and what it's about, and how to, and if you just watch it drawing, but if you can bring your own stuff and draw it with us, it's much better because it's the way of bringing it into your body. And I've been going back over this stuff. And my dreams have been like off the charts with sacred geometry, and it really shifts, your way of moving about the world and what you see and how you see things.
When is the first one gonna get
we
on?
Don't know.
We're gonna tape on Wednesday,
mm-hmm.
and then they'll put out something. Anybody who's connected with Off Planet Radio, I think they put out something, like a materials list if people want to draw with us, and then. I don't know whether we'll do one a month or however it works. So we'll just get the first one, see how it goes. We'll do, do some drawing. And it's like with everything else, the first hour we'll do a drawing. And then the second hour for the Patreons, we'll talk about.
I imagine if you're not already subscribed to Off Planet Radio, go ahead and subscribe so you get the notices when it does come out.
Yeah.
That's probably the easiest, I would imagine.
That's great.
Yeah. It'd be fun. It's fun working with Emily.
Yeah. We haven't done it in about a good 10 or 12 years, and we were wanting to get back into it, but weren't having the discipline. Mm-hmm. So this was a good impetus, and it's really exciting to get back to the drawing again.
Nice. Yeah. Good deal. All right.
Yeah, we're looking forward to it.
Lots happening.
Yeah, there is lots happening.
Yeah.
Thank you so much, Robert.
Yeah, nice hanging with you, Robert.
Everything.
Nice hanging with you, Krys.
Absolutely.
Thank you, Steve.
I hardly see.
adorable?
I hardly see her.
What about Jasper? You nice hanging with Jasper?
Oh, man, we
Jasper.
love Jasper.
Jasper's great. Chengi's is out on the screened-in porch.
I
even
brought
even
Shang.
Rosie's getting in on it now. She just walked into the room.
Did she? Rosie.
We speak, yeah.
So,
Hi, Rosie.
So where can people find out about all your wonderful books?
right. Well, the books are logosophiabooks.com, LOGOSOPHIA books.com. So we have my book. We have lots of books
Hi,
there.
Rosie.
You're gonna find something you're gonna want.
Rosie.
And then also all our videos. I would just say if you go to Vimeo and just search Logo Sophia, our page with all the videos will come up. We got some old classics like me talking about the Matrix movies in whatever it was, 2003 or something like
And
that.
me giving a workshop in our barn about Irish holy wells.
Krys in the barn. There's some classics there. You can see our younger selves.
Right.
Cool.
So yeah, please feel welcome. I think we're up to like 6 subscribers now to our Vimeo channel.
All right. Let's pile on. Give them
Let's
another
shoot
6
this-
before the weekend is over.
Yeah, with all your help, we can get up to 10.
Yeah.
Oh, this is going to be fun. Thanks, Robert.
Okay. Have a great weekend
Yeah.
You too.
and
You
enjoy
too,
Robert.
the
Yeah.
summer.
everybody. Thanks for listening and hanging out with us.
Yeah, we'll see you in a month.
Okay.
Okay.
We'll see you sooner.
You'll see me sooner.
Well, on 15 minutes of fun.
Oh, right. You'll see me sooner. Got it.
Right.
That's
We'll
true.
see you sooner
That's
than
true.
you'll see
Yeah.
us.
Yeah. Okay.
Got it?
All
Yeah.
right. And
Bye-bye.
that's it. Thank you, Krimis. Use
You're
your
welcome.
to learn what's real, your heart to say what's possible. I'm Robert Phoenix. Everybody in the chat room, thank you very much for showing up today. And I'll be back on Sunday nights with the Sunday night live stream, Astro live stream. Take good care. Bye for now.
Okay. Thanks again.